Hello everybody, this is Cameron Day, coming to you via utopiaradio.com and of course my website ascensionhelp.com. It's wonderful to be speaking with you all today. I'll be answering questions in the Utopia Radio chat room, so come on in, feel free to ask any questions, and we're going to have a wonderful 90 minutes together. So if you haven't heard of me before and you wonder why some guy named Cameron has a site named ascensionhelp.com, I'd like to tell you just a little bit about myself. I've been doing remote energy clearings, that is, clearing somebody's energy field at a distance, for over 10 years. About 7 years ago, I took a break, turned out to be a 7-year break from doing remote healings, simply because I decided that I needed to minimize my own ego, needed to become more clear, needed to become more loving, so that I would actually be able to do a higher level of energy clearing in my work. So in the course of those 7 years, quite a bit happened, and during that time I believe I got a pretty good handle on what the ego's true role should be in consciousness, at least in my consciousness. And as I share that information with others and help them to get past their own ego hang-ups, their own repetitive judgments and worries, all the cyclone of hectic thoughts that rattle around in our minds. As I started to do that more and more, just on an individual basis, my higher self started telling me stronger and stronger that I was basically not fulfilling my role and that I needed to get back into doing remote energy work and helping as many people as possible. So I finally answered that call in 2008, put together a website, named it ascensionhelp.com on the urging of my higher self. Because let's face it, if I was doing that from my ego, ascensionhelp.com, well, I think we all know that that wouldn't be the right place to come from. And on the site, I've endeavored to share free of charge as much of the information and knowledge that I have about how to clear yourself of your own limitations, your own hang-ups, how to minimize your own ego voice so that it is not dominating your sphere of consciousness. The self-clearing system has been very well received by everybody who's been to the site and used it, and awareness is growing about the message that I have to offer. And really, my message is the same message that every teacher has taught over the course of human history, is that you're divine, and in order to grow as a human, we need to reconnect to our divine aspect, our higher self. So that's the very first step in the self-clearing process, is reconnecting to your own higher self, bringing it down, anchored into your body, as opposed to most people, their higher self is floating about a foot or two above their head, simply because they have decided to believe that they were separate from God. And whatever we think, whatever we believe, the universe and our higher self gives to us. So if we think we're separate from God, the higher self will separate from you as much as possible, which is basically 2 feet above your head, if you want to put it into a space-time configuration. But of course, the higher self has never left you. It was always there, just waiting to be invited back in. So we invite the higher self back in, and then we connect to the core of the Milky Way galaxy. The galactic core, the galactic sun that our solar system revolves around, That is where all of the new energy, the new information, the new frequencies of consciousness are coming to our planet from. So once we can tune ourselves into the galactic core, we go from being third dimensional consciousness Earth humans to now having fourth and fifth dimensional consciousness as galactic humans. And a little bit later in the show, I'll go into a lot more detail about second, third, fourth, fifth dimensional states of mind and how you can cultivate your own. But back to self-clearing, once we're reunified with the galactic core and our higher self, we can then have our higher self send back any harmful projections from any being, whether they're physical or non-physical. We can have our higher self send that energy back to the higher self of the entity sending it. And then we can take back all of our own judgments, projections, etc. back to us, so that with the help of our higher self, we can transmute them. Then we move on to ego minimizing. That is very key. If I could, I would make that the very first technique. Unfortunately, the ego is always interpreting, misinterpreting, analyzing, and attempting to compartmentalize all of the spiritual data that we encounter. It tries to put all of those fourth and fifth dimensional concepts down into really what amounts to a two-dimensional frame of mind, which is polarity or binary consciousness. Good and evil, right and wrong. This spiritual path is right, that path is wrong, that type of thing. That's all the ego is really doing in our minds when we absorb a new spiritual concept. So with this technique, we minimize the ego. We sit it aside, we tell it to sit quietly in the corner, we thank it for its contribution, and then in that state of non-ego presence within our own mind, we can expand our inner divine light of our higher self so that it encompasses our entire body, our entire sphere of consciousness, and we're literally filled with that infinitely powerful bright light of our divine self. And from that expanded point of consciousness, we can then reclaim any power we have put into any limiting emotion, any experience in our past that is still causing us pain. We can reclaim the power from that pain. We can transmute it back into pure energy and gain the wisdom from every experience we've had in our entire life and any pain that we have that's still holding us back. And that is the system described in a nutshell. We're going to go into that more later, and at the end of the show, I'll take you all through a process in much more detail, going through each of those main steps. And at the end of it, you will have experienced the self-clearing system in its essence. But right now, where I want to bring us back to is two-dimensional consciousness. Now, why would I want to take you so low? Well, only because that's our ego. And the ego has been running the show on Earth for pretty much all of recorded human history. The ego is our analytical aspect. It comes pre-wired with the human body. So we knew coming in that we would be forgetting who we were, the beings of light that we truly are, and we'd be taking on a helpless little body that had a little ego in it that would gradually build up over time to help us navigate three-dimensional reality. Now, if it were strictly navigating the ego would be very helpful. But instead, it begins judging, resisting, criticizing, and just worrying about really things of no consequence, because even if all of our worst worries came true and happened tomorrow, we'd probably still be here and still be functioning humans. And the ego thinks really in two dimensions. Thinks in good and bad, black and white, right or wrong. And that mode of thinking still dominates many of the minds of Earth humans at this time. And so when you feel yourself going into a thought pattern of judging and worrying and being binary, what I mean by binary is that it has to be this way or that way. There's only the good way or the bad way, the right way or the wrong way. So in that pinging back and forth between good and bad, right and wrong, that's what I call two-dimensional consciousness. Now, once we can expand our consciousness just a little bit, expand our minds to seeing not just what's happening from our own limited point of view, but seeing what's happening on a global scale. Truly understanding the plight of the 3 billion people on the planet that live on less than $2 US per day. Truly understanding and accepting what's happening around the world is what I call three-dimensional consciousness. Now, actually, accepting usually isn't involved in third-dimensional consciousness. Mostly it's awareness and then resistance, judging it, because as beings who want to see a better world, when we look at half of the planet living in poverty, it's only natural to judge that as bad and needing to be changed. Well, it does need to be changed, but it's not necessarily bad. And that's what brings us now to fourth dimensional consciousness, fourth chakra, fourth seal consciousness. And we can elevate ourselves to looking at the planet from outside of the planet rather than as a player in the game of Earth reality. When we do that, we can actually love the entire crazy seeming experience on the planet for exactly what it is, which is a very precise illusion, a very precise biofeedback mechanism of a seemingly solid reality that's constantly mirroring back to us the content of our own thoughts. And so everything that we directly experience in life is the result of the thoughts that we have had, the thoughts that we've continued to cultivate. And then we take that to a fifth dimensional awareness, and that's what I call galactic consciousness, where we become aware of the fact that we are galactic humans. We are not just Earth humans, but we come from that galactic core. We can be tuned into that galactic core at all times. And from that state of wisdom, of seeing the Earth as one potential reality in a galaxy teeming with life, in a universe teeming with galaxies teeming with life, that level of expanded galactic consciousness puts into wisdom and into perspective all of the suffering that's occurring here on Earth. And once we touch that level of awareness, even just for a moment, it changes us forever. And we then want to share that awareness with everybody that we know. And that, in essence, is the beginning of the ascension process. We ascended our frequency of thought from